Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Communications Masterclass. Today we are talking about missing social cues. And we have the ever lovely Vicki Helm and Dee Dee Lee here. So it's a topic that we discussed a few weeks ago, but I want to dig a little deeper this week because it is so critical in terms of communication. When you have communication going on, you have the words, so you have the content, but you also have the context. And the context are those micro signals called social cues. So if you are only paying attention to the words, you're missing half the conversation. So social cues are really significant and they're not easy to find sometimes. Some of them are very obvious. If somebody leans in, they're interested. If they lean back, they may not be quite as involved in the conversation. If there's a raised eyebrow, if there's a smirk. Hello, beautiful Nisha. We're glad you're here today. Drive carefully. So, whether we're talking about a vocal social cue, which has to do with the number of pauses, it has to do with the tone, it has to do with the speed by which someone's speaking. It could be the facial expressions, which could be eyebrows, smiles or smirks, looking away, looking at their phone, which is a big one these days. It's really hard from looking at your phone. Is it because it's a learned behavior? Or is it because they're bored and they're not committed to the relationship? So that one's a really hard one to manage because it has become a learned behavior for so many people. I wrote an article, I don't know if it's published yet, but talked about the fact that when you are online, don't just turn your phone over, put it away, put it in a drawer, because when you get bored, you have a tendency to think, well, I'll just look over here and nobody will notice that I'm looking at my phone and replying to my texts, when obviously in most cases you do notice them. So we have voice, we have face, and we have behavior. And behavior has to do with leaning forward, leaning back. I mentioned looking at the phone. We talked about the position of the feet. If they're in, they're pointing towards you. If they're not in the conversation, they're pointing away from you. So behaviorally, there are also a lot of things to look at. Pardon me. So as you go through this, you need to really be monitoring them in a very diligent way because they could be micro expressions, but they could make all the difference. Now, have you ever been in a conversation where the person was talking and talking and talking and talking, and at the end of the conversation, they're probably thinking, oh, she gets it. This is great. And meanwhile, you're thinking, I have no idea what I just wasted 5 minutes of my time on. Because they don't know. And what happens is that when people aren't savvy with social cues, they start doing things like over explaining. They think that well, you haven't responded yet. So maybe if I explain just a little more, it'll make a difference. And it won't. One of the biggest ways to manage social cues, if you're not good at it, and Dee Dee, I don't know about you and social cues, but I do know you have a very analytical mind. And people with analytical minds struggle with social cues because you're focused on logic, you're focused on structure, And those are all content things. So you're not really focused on the cues, the emotional side of it, unless someone is obvious in their emotion, if they're laughing or if they're crying. So for an analytical mind, social cues can be a real challenge. So it requires even more effort to really get them, particularly because they are so small. I mean, they're micro expressions, micro signals. So they require a lot of looking at them. Now, one way that you can address social cues, particularly if you don't think you're adept at them. Nisha has a face. Hi. I thought that was just a picture you got in a picture frame and popped up there.
I left early so I could park and actually show my face. So I'm here.
Oh, yay, Nisha. It is so nice to officially meet you in person, sort of.
Nice to meet you, Nisha. Nice to see you as well.
It's nice to meet y'all as well. I told Miss Karen I look forward to Wednesdays to hear the masterclass. So I'm happy I got a chance to show my face.
Yes, so am I. So am I. Another reason that people can be missing micro cues is a very, very common thing. And that is when people are speaking, more often than not, they're focused on what they're going to say next, as opposed to really listening intently. So, and it's a learned behavior, and it's a hard one to break. So it's important to be very present in your conversations. Many years ago, I attended a mindfulness retreat. And one of the exercises that we did was to get in small groups. And one person was chosen, and they had to talk for 5 minutes. And they could talk about anything they wanted. But it was important that those of us who were listening not say a word, not a word of validation, don't interrupt. Focus on what they're saying. Don't think about what you're going to say next. That process was intended so that you would be focusing on her, and then you would realize, oh, wait, my mind is wandering about what I want to say next. Oh, wait, I want to fix what she's saying. So it became very aware to me how often my mind drifts in conversations about what I want to say next. So that's one of the biggest reasons that social cues are missed. Yes, Vicky.
I have a kind of clarity question I would like to ask. During that exercise, even while you were talking about the story that you were doing a mindfulness, I could catch my brain do that.
Mhm.
When I'm listening to somebody, when I'm truly listening to someone, sometimes when they talk, there isn't enough clarity about something and they lose me midway. And what I have a tendency to do, and I'm not sure it's very socially graceful, but what I'm really looking for is connection and to be listen clearly with them. And what I do is I say, wait, 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 was it this person who did this or this person who did this? Which one? And then when they answer it like it was this person, I go, okay, I'm with you because I want to be with them in the conversation. But I just realized that that might not be very polite. And what I don't like is listening to someone speak like for 15 minutes and I don't even know what they've said because, or I'm lost in the conversation. And I'm wondering, what is the socially graceful way to do that? And B, that listening for 5 minutes. When I listen, I want to be with the person in the conversation. I don't know how to explain that other than the
Mhm.
details they're sharing, I want to understand them well so that I'm really with them in the conversation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yes, I totally do, and the way that you handled it is perfect because that's really how you clarify when you don't see the social cue, or in your case, as a listener, you're shooting off all kinds of social cues that they're not picking up on. It's okay to stop and say, "Excuse me a minute. Could you just clarify this one point?
Yeah.
Who went to the store?"
Yes.
Um, because they will appreciate that you're still with them. And if you're the one who's seeing the social cues of, "I'm not with you anymore, um, I've got someplace else to be," whatever, it's okay for you as the speaker to stop and say, sort of bring them back with questions like, "Does that make sense?"
Mhm.
Or, "I think that I may have gone off track there for a moment. Did let me bring it back to start."
Yeah.
So you take blame on yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but asking the questions, whether you're the listener or the speaker, is imperative. And it's imperative. We've talked about it multiple times throughout master classes. It's important in so many different aspects of communication, and social cues is one of them.
Yeah, there what I have found when these kinds of things happen is somebody who is defensive, somebody who's stressed out, somebody who's super excited, they talk at a different speed and they leave out details of whatever. And um, I want to be as polite as I can when I'm communicating with someone. And I get the mindfulness, but if you're truly mindful, you're listening to what they say. And sometimes you have to go, I'm sorry, I'm not with you. And if somebody's defensive, they can't even hear you. They're can you wait a minute? Let me ask this question so I'm with you. Because I hear what you're saying, but it doesn't make any sense.
Mhm,
So that the practice of the social graces is when you want the information and it's not coming through, and I say, "May I ask you a question?" is usually what I do. I try to interrupt and go, "May I ask you a question?" And some people are like, "Wait," but you're like, "Okay." And then they have to repeat themselves all the way all over again because there's no stopping in the middle. And
mhm.
I feel like the social grace of being able to stay in the conversation is as equally important as listening to the conversation. The understanding the conversation is part of a listener grace, a
Mhm,
listener whatever it is.
mhm.
And that's really for me a practice because details matter.
They absolutely do. And the thing is, if you aren't paying attention to the cues, or if you aren't asking the questions to make sure that the listener is with you, you're
Yeah.
you're missing it. You are assuming that they agree with you,
Mhm.
and they may not. They may just be wanting to be delicate about, they didn't wanna disagree with you in front of someone else, or
Or they don't wanna set you off. They don't wanna, make you more stressed because you need more details or something.
well, exactly, exactly. It's really, um, it's challenging. Social cues in meetings can be particularly challenging
Yeah.
because you have multiple people
Mhm.
and you need to be looking at everybody when you're talking to make sure that that everybody is on the same page as you are. And if you see somebody who definitely looks disgruntled, you want to be able to say, uh, "Is everybody getting this?" And if they still don't respond, you want to say, um, Joe, you've got a look on your face. It seems like you don't agree with what I'm saying here. Um, and I mean, you call them out in a nice way, in a sort of joking way. You don't look at them and say, you're not paying attention to me. Why aren't you paying attention to me? Um, it's tough, and it's very tough because going back to the phones, when people are in meetings, they are notorious for looking at their phones. It's terribly rude. And again, how much of that is learned behavior because we're so addicted? We hear a ping, and right away it's something we have to look at. Whereas I'm in the middle of a conversation with you, therefore it's rude for me to look. Yes, Vic.
I just want to add that that piece that you just talked about with the phone is so important because it is also depositing into the love bank. When you're conversating with someone and maybe you're investing in the relationship, it could be a new work relationship or an old relationship, whatever. And when that phone dings, if you just like put it away, you have made a deposit in the love bank. That person in front of you knows that you are attentive to them, that they have your full presence. And I just wanted to say, I think it's an important part of it's like the reason you have social graces is because it's like a silent way of saying you matter. This conversation matters. The agenda on the conversation matters. Everything about that matters. Now, I know that the listener is what we've been talking about, but now I would like to ask, what about the the conversator, the person speaking, and their phone goes off and they're like this? I mean, what are ways that the person who's leading the conversation in that moment is squirrely, like me? What are some of the things that we can do to say, "Look, I wanna pay attention to you, but I want you to pay attention to me also, so we're in this conversation together without outside conversations of any kind. Let's just be present with each other." How do we do that when you're the listener, the receiver of the conversation, and they're, let's say, even in an authority position?
Well, and that's a challenge when they're in an authority position. However, you're still a leader, whether you have a title or not. And so to get to them, and if my phone rings or it keeps pinging when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I will apologize, and I will take my phone and I will put it on silent in front of them. I have now set a precedent that says you're more important. And presumably, when their phone pings, they're going to be less inclined to pick it up. However, if they keep picking it up, then I would not hesitate to say, Joe, you seem really busy. Should we have this conversation? Should we schedule a time to have the conversation later? And hopefully that will call Joe out and he will say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry," and push the phone away. Or he may say, "Yes, actually, we need to have this conversation. Let's do it after lunch today." So awareness is the big thing, creating awareness and setting a precedent by, "I'm so sorry, but let me silence this for you," because not saying the words, "You're important," but that's what it says. "You're important to me." Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's so important what you're saying because the subtleties of what you just said is when you're a subordinate in a conversation, how is it that you can perform and show leadership and make a deposit in the love bank, which
Mhm.
are all good things to build relationships with. And one of the cues of this is that the reason I'm asking all of this is because right now, multitasking is something that we praise people's ability to do. But in order to multitask during a conversation, your part of you isn't there. I don't care what they say, unless you're taking notes about what they're saying, because that requires you to pay attention. If you're literally multitasking during a conversation, there is part of you that can't be there, and there will be mistakes afterwards, or there will be misunderstandings afterwards. And what I see about the phone thing is people are like, I can listen to her and do this because I've been trained to multitask. And there is a sharp bar between what I think I, I like about what you're saying, because I am presence is presence, put the phone down.
Absolutely. Dee Dee?
you know, working on a number of these courses and so on, and trying to get the operation and having these medical issues, you know, people with power, like the county, like the state, like the hospital, like the insurance company, they don't care. They expect you to be available 24/7. And, I'm sitting here answering three or four medical hospital calls, because you catch them, you snooze, you lose, that's it. And it'll be 5 months before they let you get back into the hospital, and you're going to die between now and then. So nowadays, with the phone and the cell phone, the new policy for strong influences, hospitals, schools, medical situations, is that we take precedence to everything else you're doing in your life. And you've got to have that phone on. I don't mean to be rude, but I got to have it on to get my medical appointments. And
Sure.
I've this, and it's getting more and more and more. Everybody calls at the same time, and they call when you're on the toilet. You know,
Just don't flush
and
while you're on.
yeah, so it just, I'm listening to this, and I'm saying, yeah, you're talking the rules, how politeness is, but that's not what we're doing. And it's a big leap between um etiquette and social grace, and that being taken advantage of in the worst way by other places, to where you can't get things done. I'm sitting here doing my courses with Vicky or whoever, and I've got 5 or 6 phone calls going, and I've got to hold them on, you know
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so,
Well,
I mean, my question is, this is happening to people at work. I was at getting my taxes yesterday, and the woman picked up the phone and she says, I hope to God this is emergency, kids, because I'm here at work and I'm tired of you calling me and interrupting me at work. You can't do this. And you know she was, in front of me at her business place, just chewing out her kids because she had the phone on her, and she assumed if her kids were calling, it was an emergency. you know so the question here is, the question I have is balancing the changing society. I can't meet the socially expected if the society isn't following it anyway, you
mhm.
know?
Well, but that's it. There's a simple fix to that because life does get in the way. But by simply saying, this is the hospital, I have got to take this call, or you don't have to share that it's the
Mhm.
hospital. You just have to say, I'm sorry, I'm expecting a call. Could I just check? Oh, I have to take this one. So just by keeping them informed that I'm expecting a call,
Mhm.
and then, oh, I have got to take this call. There's and I wish I could remember what it was called. from a course I took a long time ago. But basically, the concept is setting up a pre-existing expectation.
Mhm.
And that is to, before the conversation starts, before the phone rings, to say, I need to apologize to you in advance. I have multiple phone calls out regarding my health or insurance or whatever thing you want to say that you feel comfortable sharing. And I just know they're going to call once you and I start talking because that's how it always goes. So, and maybe they'll never call during that conversation, and that's okay. But you've set a pre existing expectation so they don't
One more,
think you're being rude.
one more thing. Can I please go back for a second, or do you want to go forward? I don't mind waiting till the
No,
end
no,
to
no,
ask.
no.
Okay. You were talking about analytical people, and I took this test on autism, and the parts of me are very autistic, so I don't really get these micro cues. I don't get them at all, and to me, I see them. If I do recognize a micro cue, it's more like I think they're thinking in their head to themselves. Oh, the cat! Did I put the cat out, or something like that? I don't associate it to what's happening. I just think they're mentally distracted, and you know that's it.
Well, and if you think they're distracted, that's where you ask a question. Just by saying,
Oh,
I'm rambling here. Am I being clear? So again, you're taking it back on yourself as opposed to saying you look like you're thinking about your cat. Um, just to say, I'm rambling. I'm sorry. Am I making sense? Because one of the things that you'll see are pauses. Now, pauses are wonderful. They're wonderful as a speaker because you can pause for a moment in your conversation and it reinforces a point. You can pause just before you start thinking or before you start speaking as a thoughtful response. But there are times in conversations where people are going to pause. And the pause might be a verbal pause where they just you've stopped talking and they haven't replied yet. Or a pause as in they have checked out. But that could be one of three things. It could be that the person is thinking. And if that's what it is, it's okay when you're asking them the question because then they'll say yes or no, I'm getting it, or more likely they'll say, I'm thinking about what you're saying. And my thoughts are yada yada yada. The other thing is they disagree with you and they're trying to figure out how to do it politely. And the third thing is that they have just mentally left the conversation. Yes, Vic.
I think the third thing is an important aspect of things. And I want to ask, because this is what I do when I become defensive as the listener. So maybe, somebody on my team is, whatever, but I get triggered. And when I get triggered, I'm out of the conversation in a minute. If I'm defensive, I get out of the conversation in a minute. And the only way I have figured out how to do that, because if you have a team that's saying, a team of 5 people, 3 people, whatever, your team member is like, this is wrong. It's not going to work. It's blah, blah, blah. Maybe I put my heart and soul into creating something that they're saying, no, this ain't it. And suddenly I am precious with my work maybe, and I get defensive. And the second I'm defensive, I'm like, in my brain, I leave the conversation, I start talking to myself. I'm like, I put my heart and soul into that. I'm this, I'm that. This is why this is the right thing. Da, da, da. So, what I do to bring myself back, I'm not quite sure if it's the right thing to do, but once I'm defensive and I've left the conversation, I just stop and I say, "Excuse me, I need a minute. I'm defensive right now. I feel defensive." It's not something you did because, you take things personally, and in a second that you take something personally, it's a nanosecond, you're
Mhm.
gone and you can't be present. So if you can't be present, don't you just say to them, "I can't be present this moment. Give me 5 minutes, 2 minutes." I mean, I have the luxury of being a business owner, a CEO. So when I manage myself and I want 5 minutes, I can have it. But maybe what happens if you're working a job and you have so much defensiveness, you can't hear. You're too pissed off or hurt or shocked or whatever the emotion is. How do you move through that? Because that's number 3 right there. It's like when they leave the conversation, how do you get yourself back? Because I think that's my job. I do not think it's the speaker's job. Is that true?
When you notice that you're out, yes, it is your job because your job is to be an effective listener. And if you've checked out, you're not being an effective listener. So the speaker can help the conversation by noticing a social cue and saying, "Vicky, it looks like something's wrong." But if not,
Mm.
you can stand up and say, "I need to just take a time out here.
Yeah.
I'm reacting to what you're saying, and I don't want to react. I want to be proactive, and I just need to get my thoughts together." Now, that's one thing when you're talking with peers, family, friends. If you're in a work situation where you have a boss or you're in a meeting,
Yeah.
you can't really say, "Time out, we have to stop this whole meeting because I need 5 minutes to get my brain straight." Um, in that situation, then it's all on you, and you need to get it straight in your head. And it may mean not saying something at that point, but
How
it
would
might
you like let's say we're in a meeting and it happens in a meeting. Like maybe you suddenly find out you're gonna get a pink slip in 3 months because there's a merger happening and you don't know if you're gonna have your job, or you're sitting in there in that shock. Because what I know is when I see somebody go into shock, they can't receive. If I
Mhm.
see somebody that goes into defense, now I think I'm a good business owner. I can see where my team is at and try to make that come back. But when you're a busy boss and you have this time with this meeting with these people under that circumstance, you're right. You can't just go, "I'm sorry, excuse me? Give me a minute here. Are you saying that we're not gonna have a job in 3 or 6 months? Or are you saying that you don't think my work is up to par?" Or whatever the defense is. Like, if I say if you're in a meeting and you have to, like, make a note, like, I just wanna know, listening is self-responsibility,
Yes.
and talking is self-responsibility. It's not, "You made me mad." That's just BS. It's what you said to yourself in your head made you mad. And you have
Mhm.
to stop that because you don't know if what you said in your head is actually what they mean, and they're 2 different things, and that ability to stop it right in the middle, or stop your fear or stop your thinking, that's like a huge part of the listening factor, and where I think your mindfulness comment that came in. And when you have to make yourself present, like when you're in that conversation and you have to make yourself present in a room of people, and you're is there like something you can say, something you can do, how do you pull yourself back? Because it's your responsibility to do that. Most people shove it down. They're like, and they swallow it, and then pretty soon they're having another donut, So I'm like, how do you bring yourself present without eviscerating yourself, saying to yourself, in this social moment, it's not okay for you to not be present. I get that I'm angry or shocked or scared or whatever it is. But let's like, is there a technique to a breathing thing you can do while you're listening because you still have to remain present? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, and my recommendation would be 3 things. The first thing is self-talk. You've gotta tell yourself, "This is not the time or place, and I need to get a grip, and I am going to respect these feelings that I have, and I'm going to do it as soon as this meeting is over." Now, the second thing is to breathe. Now, I love the 4-2-6 breathing, which is the in 4 and then 2 sniffs. So now your lungs are at full capacity, and then slowly breathe out through your mouth for a count of 6, because then you're expelling all of the carbon dioxide that's in your lungs. Um, you can do that subtly. I mean, it's not like fire breathing that we talked about where you're um, it's all this is why I didn't do it on the call. um,
I'm sorry, but meeting and me going,
yeah, don't do that in a meeting. But you need to, and if you can't do the 4-2-6, at least take some deep breaths and gently blow them out through your mouth so that it's not obvious to other people. But breathing will calm your nervous system and your response system. And the third thing is if you have a good leader in the meeting, they're going to see this. And if it's a conversation about possible layoffs, um, effectiveness of your team, something big like that, then hopefully they're going to understand the fact that there is going to be some emotion in the meeting. And then they will give you permission by saying, "Vicky, what are you thinking right now?"
Yeah,
So
I think that's good.
they
But
won't call you on
that
being
requires the leader, though.
it does. It requires the leader. So the 3 things are talk yourself down, breathe, and pray that you have a great leader. And a great leader will say, "How are you feeling?" As opposed to, "You look upset. What's wrong?" Um, and if they do say, "You look upset. What's wrong?" So they've called you on it, and now you can't hide it until you get your thoughts together. Then a simple conversation that says, "I'm processing everything that you're saying right now, and it's going to take me a few minutes to process it before I can really respond in a responsible way because I don't want to be reactive." Does
I
that answer
think
your
that's
question?
I think it's the most important. It's like the most money I make is, the climb to the 7 figures or above is all about managing people. It's
Mhm.
your product's gotta be good, you gotta be a good speaker, but it is your team environment and the culture because you don't go anywhere, you don't get great unless you have good communications with good, strong people. And I know for me, the things that scare me are if I screwed up badly, and I am one I'll call my entire team and go, "I screwed up badly, and now we have to fix this." But if, there's somebody above me or partners that I have to, talk to, there's a point where sometimes when I'm communicating, I am communicating, but my stress level is at, like, 100, and the stress that I usually feel is I don't want anybody to be mad at me. I don't like it. I don't want to have this hard conversation, but I'm having the hard conversation.
Mhm.
I have to tell somebody how I screwed up or how I lost some money that was belonging to here. And, as the leader of the pack, that thing is there. And I want to make sure, because sometimes when my stress level is way high, my receiving level from my team is I can't receive, I can't hear, I can't think. And I'm looking at some of the things that you're saying right now are the most important parts of a business's success. If we don't have these kind of social graces or social skills or listening skills to where you need, it costs you hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars. And so it's like the scorecard is, if I see somebody who manages people well, I go introduce myself to them right away. Thus how I met you. And then when I see it's like when pressure happens, can you still be mindful and listen and be present, not take things personally, not be defensive, know your triggers? I mean, it's like emotional adulting. And if you have a team of 3 to 5 people that are emotionally adulting together on one project, the sky's the limit. And
Mhm.
so what I'm looking at right now is these social graces that I think you've been sharing with us are emotional adulting, and they mean the difference between being a 5, 4, 5, or six-figure earner. That's it. That
Mhm.
one skill set. And even your boss won't know what's happening and why you're so good, but that's the key delineator. And I think even if we have another social graces call, I could talk about this all day with you, and I think the presentation of it has been spot on, because 'cause you've pointed out a bunch of areas I think I need to improve on.
Well, and thank you. Ultimately, the signals are where the conversation really is. The words are just the content. But if I'm fidgeting, if I'm talking to you about something and I'm fidgeting, if I see that, I would probably say, "Hey, are you okay?" It may have nothing to do with the conversation, or my conversation may be upsetting them. So again, it's okay to ask questions both as the listener and as the speaker. Dee Dee, you had your hand raised, and I know we're at the top of the hour, but I would love to just take a few minutes and answer whatever question or hear your comment if that's all right with everybody.
It's all right with me. I don't mind going over the hour, especially on this stuff. Um, we're working with communication, and the basis of that is the intention of both people wanting to connect, to
Mhm.
communicate with each other. So that's the premise. But much of communication is strategic, and it is power oriented. And I'm looking at some of these things. I don't like giving up my personal power to some concept of correctness because people automatically manipulate it. It becomes a chess game. Oh, you are, I can go ahead and point you're being bad because you're being emotional, or you're having some kind of disconnect, or you should be doing this. And um, I understand using appropriate communication when I'm going ahead and dealing with people that really want to communicate and connect. I'm very, very sensitive to judgmental words because actually what they're trying to do is cage you in a place where you're going to follow their command and you're going to feel bad and you're going to feel unconfident and so on. So I wouldn't say certain things personally, but I've seen them happen quite a bit. I don't say, oh, yeah, well, they're being disruptive, because that automatically sets them in a cage of being bad. rather than saying, you really want to express something, slow down, take a breath, I will listen,
Mhm.
which is how I hear you communicating, trying to connect with me to find out what that is.
Mhm.
To judge the person and say, oh, they're being aggressive or disruptive or things like this. You're putting them in a box
Mhm.
so
Well,
that you can disregard them. And that's often a political move with conversations in business meetings and things. Men do this all the time.
I've seen that. I've seen that. And that's not good communication. Not at
And so
all.
do you continue to follow it or do you just bring it up?
I think that Vicky has something she wants to say, and then I will answer that, Dee Dee. Go ahead, Vic.
Well, I agree with you, Edie. There are some people who are communicating in order to gaslight, control, dominate, lie, any of those things. So when my red flag goes off, I ask them a question and I would say, when I hear you say gaslighting comment word for word, I'm wondering if you're trying to gaslight me because that's what it kind of feels like. And then I add, is that true? Because I know they're going to go, no, I'm not trying to gaslight you, blah, blah, blah. And I will go, great. What is it that you were trying to say that wasn't gaslighting? Because I'm not I'm not getting your message. And if they do it again, I do the same thing again. When I hear you say, that's the biggest part. When I hear you say, and then quote the exact thing that they've said. When I hear you say this, I can say, it feels like, but when I say it feels like, you're easily manipulated. If I say, it sounds like you're attempting to, or it sounds like you want something else, but you're afraid to ask for it. Is that true? Or whatever it is, it's that confronting them with the sounds like, not it makes me feel, because then they can go, well, that's your problem. It
Mhm.
sounds like this. Is that true? And they're going to back out. But when they start backpedaling, you can do that. That's how I deal with that. Cue Karen. Thank you for letting me share.
I think that what Vicky just said is perfect, Dee Dee. I think that by calling them out on it respectfully and using the terminology like what I'm hearing, what it sounds like. And to her point, you don't want to say, it makes me feel, because they don't deserve that intimacy of your emotions. So don't give it to them. Don't fall into their trap. Social cues are, or observing social cues are, or is an art. You're never going to get every single one of them. Human beings are way too complex. However, if you can improve your observing social cues just by 10%, just a little bit, and you can do that by doing things like before you respond, when someone's speaking to you and you're the listener, before you respond, just take just a moment before you start speaking. And when you are a listener, be very present, because when you're present, your social cues are genuine as opposed to, boy, I wonder if I fed my cat this morning, or looking at your phone. As a speaker, huge responsibility of looking for social cues, because that's where you're getting the validation that the person is with you. People don't like to say, I disagree with you, Joe. I think you're full of it. Most people don't like to say that. um, so you have to look and see what they're saying, because if you call them out on it with a simple question, you're giving them permission to respond and you've diffused their frustration or their anger. Now, they still may not be honest with you. They still may say, no, everything's fine. But you've given them the opportunity. And if you are the one who disagrees or is overwhelmed by emotion with a conversation, it is okay to go back later. Now, if you're in a meeting, you can't go back to every single person, but you could go back to your boss or the person who was having conversations to say, I'd like to talk to you about what you said earlier today. I want to make sure that I understand because, quite frankly, I let myself get emotional about it and I didn't want to interrupt the meeting. Those are the things that will make you trustworthy. By missing social cues, by not seeing the congruency between what I say and what my face looks like, or what I say and what your face looks like, there's a trust issue there. And trust is critical to connection. Does anyone have anything else to say before we wrap up? No? Very good. Thank you for giving me the extra 9 minutes. I really appreciate it. Nisha, thank you so much for leaving early so I can see your beautiful face. It's so nice to know that you're a real person and not just a picture.
It's nice to meet you. Yeah, or see you.
Yes. So thank you, ladies. I appreciate your time as always. I appreciate your input, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Karen, for your
Bye,
time.
ladies.